This is a Miraculous Ladybug story called Shattered Iron. After a fight with an akuma goes wrong, Chat and a knocked-out ladybug hide in a closet to wait for their transformations to recharge. The room was dark, so dark he couldn't see his hand in front of his face, much less of the identity of the woman in his arms. He was leaning back against the cold wall, his arms firmly wrapped around her, as if he feared that she would disappear. "Adrian, you should get some sleep too, you know," a small voice said near his ear. It was Plag, Adrian knew. And he also knew that the Kwame was right. He couldn't sleep, though. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Ladybug protecting him filled his mind. The shock on her face as the shattered glass tore into her was permanently etched on the back of his eyelids and left him unable to find any sort of peace in sleep. "I can't," Adrian sighed, his arms holding Ladybug's sleeping form even closer to him. She was warm laying against him like this, her civilian clothes soft to the touch. "It's not your fault, you know," a female voice whispered from the darkness. Adrian could just make out Tiki, as she flew up to hover before him. The strange, slight glow surrounding the Kwame allowed him to see her, if nothing else. Resting his chin on Ladybug's hair, her hair as soft as silk, he took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the scent of her as he desperately tried to control his emotions. "It feels like it," Adrian managed finally. Tiki moved forward, nuzzling his forehead with hers, and ever so gently pressed a kiss to the tip of his nose. "You were protecting a child, and she protected you. That's the way it works. It's not your fault that you didn't realize there were two akuma out there. Ladybug didn't realize it either." The warm body tucked at the hollow of his throat moved, and Plag floated up next to Tiki in the inky darkness, his green eyes giving away his position. "Yeah, we didn't realize it either, Adrian. You even got yourselves in here before the transformations wear off so you didn't blow your identities. You did a great job." "Yeah," Adrian responded, somewhat despondent. The events of the day were playing in his mind, even as he desperately tried to figure out where in the world he had gone wrong. The day had started out fairly normal for him. He woke to his father's aide banging on the door, had breakfast alone, and had gone to the bakery where he met up with Marinette before school. Since the Battle of Aqueous, he had officially started dating her, and he was in seventh heaven. Gone were the days where she would trip verbally or physically as she tried to talk to him, although she still tripped often due to her clumsiness. Their friends had totally been lost the first time they had interacted at school, after the fiasco caused by Aqueous, but together they had made up yet another tandem lie that made them both fall into giggle fits at the end. These days, Marinette let her true personality shine, and she was a confident, sassy, beautiful girl who was reminding him more and more of Ladybug every day. Before, Adrian had refused to let Ladybug reveal her identity, due to selfish reasons mostly. He didn't want to have to choose between his lady and his princess, not so soon. Now, though, he was genuinely curious. Plus, he wasn't sure he would have to choose at all, and he found himself deeply in love with Marinette. From the look in her eyes, whether he was with her as Chad or Adrian, he could tell that she loved him back, even if they were still both a bit too chicken to say it. Even if Marinette wasn't Ladybug, it wouldn't matter to him. But there was always that chance, and Adrian was almost convinced that they were one and the same person. School had passed at a dismally slow pace, but he hadn't minded since it was a better option than the photo shoot that he was now stuck at. They had him change clothes, so he now sported a black leather jacket, an emerald green undershirt, and a pair of dark blue, almost black jeans. The clothes were surprisingly comfortable, but he was hungry since it was now long past lunchtime. It was really too bad that he hadn't caught Marinette before he had left, because she usually brought him something to eat when the photo shoots ran as long as this one seemed to be. Just when Adrian was thinking about asking for a break, the first screams echoed, interrupting the photo shoot. It took several moments for people to realize what was happening. It was an akuma attack. Then, everyone had run away, knowing that Chat and Noir and Ladybug would soon arrive. Everyone had run but him. Adrian, of course, had run towards the screams, trying to find a good place to hide. But every time he paused for a moment, several people would bolt past him. Still, though, he felt the drive to help, transformed or not. So charging out into the street, he nearly came face to face with a Kuma-sized person who was spraying shards of glass at anyone and everyone that was too close. "I am Shatterglass!" the akuma-sized person roared, twirling what had to be a glassmaker's pipe in his hands. They were tall and angular, any flat surface on their body reflecting light back and causing rainbows to bloom with every movement that they made. Colors swirled across their body, and Adrian knew that if Marinette were here, she would be having a field day. They carried a pipe in one hand, and what almost looked like a flame torch was attached to their other arm. Most of the people in the area had fled, but somehow a small group of school kids were trapped between a pool of molten glass and a corner wall, screaming as the Akuma had advanced. "You shall be our masterpiece!" Shatterglass yelled, bringing the pipe to his lips. Adrian didn't think, and since he didn't have time to transform then come back, he simply charged in hoping for the best. He had come out behind Shatterglass, and somehow the Akuma-sized person didn't even notice his presence. Sprinting forward, Adrian jumped straight at him, latching onto his back and clinging with all his might, while throwing off his aim. Molten glass struck the wall closest to the kids, and it seemed to snap them out of their petrified state. "Run, kids!" Adrian shouted, and he could practically hear Plague cursing at him from his pocket. The children fled, and Shatterglass turned to follow, as Adrian reached around to try to grab the pipe, figuring that was where the Akuma was. Heat seared his hand before he even came close to touching it, and with a hiss, Adrian recoiled, then punched at Shatterglass's face since he didn't seem to care that Adrian was clinging to his back like a monkey. Finally, that seemed to gain Shatterglass's attention, and he jerked the pipe down as a purple mask covered his face for a brief second. Knowing that Hawkmoth could see through the Akuma-sized person's eyes, Adrian reacted quickly. Covering Shatterglass's eyes with both hands, Adrian clung with his legs as Shatterglass twisted and tried to grab hold of him. The children were out of the plaza, and so was everyone else. Now, all he had to do was get away safely. "Get off of me!" Shatterglass shouted, flailing about as he tried and failed to dislodge Adrian from his back. Finally, twisting and causing his angular, hard edges to dig into Adrian mercilessly, he managed to get a grip on the jacket that Adrian now wore. Untransformed, Adrian was far stronger than a normal human, thanks to the bleed over from the Kwami's magic. However, it was still no match for an Akuma-sized person's strength. With a solid grip on his jacket, Shatterglass plucked him from his back and threw him as if he were a simple annoyance that wasn't meant to be bothered with. Adrian hit the ground hard and slid a few feet, thankful for the jacket because otherwise he'd have some serious road rash. Rolling to his knees with a groan, Adrian did a mental body check. Nothing broken, just bruised, and as he looked up he realized that he was absolutely screwed. Shatterglass advanced on him, the nasty glint in his eye telling him that he was about to be attacked. "Transform, Adrian!" Plague hissed from his pocket, even as he slapped a hand over him, preventing Shatterglass from seeing it, as he scooted backwards. Shatterglass raised the pipe to his lips, and in the next second, a red blur smashed in Shatterglass's back. "Leave him alone!" a female voice cried, as Ladybug leapt from the rooftop. "Ladybug!" Shatterglass snarled as he spun around, leaving Adrian forgotten on the ground. Knowing this was his chance, Adrian scrambled to his feet and ran, figuring that once he was out of sight, he could transform and quickly return to help. He hadn't made it very far when something hard struck him in the back, knocking him over. Swiftly, Adrian twisted, expecting glass, and instead found Ladybug sprawled out across him. She was only there for a second, because in the next, she was on her feet once more, yo-yos spinning and blocking the shards of glass that flew their way. "Up!" Ladybug snapped at him, and Adrian was on his feet in a moment, wondering if he should try to run again. The attack paused as Shatterglass took in a deep breath, and things suddenly moved very fast. Ladybug spun, scooped him up, threw her yo-yo, and then they were swinging away, causing Adrian to yelp in surprise. He was completely unused to being carried, much less being carried around by Ladybug. Wrapping his arms tight around her, Adrian had to remind himself that he wasn't afraid of heights, since he had never been so high up without any kind of weapon or tool to catch him should he fall. Glass shards slashed the air around them as Shatterglass joined them on the rooftops, and several shards hit Ladybug's back, one even hitting Adrian's wrist. Adrian hissed in pain, and from the way Ladybug's breath hitched, he knew that it had to have hurt. Yet, Her feet never faltered as she launched them into the sky once more. "Don't let go! I need my other hand!" Ladybug yelled over the whistling of the wind, and Adrian tried to reply only to have the wind steal his breath away. Shatterglass appeared over the edge of the rooftop that they just cleared, and was still coming as he rode what looked like a spire of molten glass. "He's still chasing us! We need to take cover!" Adrian yelled so that she could hear him. "Position?" Ladybug asked, and Adrian knew that she had a plan. Swiftly, he gave her the angle, distance, and direction, then called, "Dodge right!" as another wave of glass shards tried to make them into pincushions. Ladybug sped up, then yelled, "Hang on!" as she threw her yo-yo and sent them soaring. She twisted them mid-air, and Adrian suddenly found himself upside down and backwards, time seeming to slow as he craned his head to see what in the world his lady was up to. From that position, in a magnificent feat of acrobatics, she launched her yo-yo, torquing it so that it spun out in an arc that slammed home right into the side of Shatterglass's head. The akuma-sized man cried out, tumbling off the molten glass and over the edge of the building. Then they were falling, causing Adrian to squeak as he realized that they missed the roof, and that they were falling quite fast into the alleyway below. 2 feet from the ground, they jerked suddenly to a halt, causing him to lose his grip and fall the rest of the way to land painfully on his tailbone. "Ow!" Adrian groaned, as Ladybug dropped to the ground and pulled him back up to his feet. "Shh!" she hissed, pressing him tight into the corner, her body covering his as moments later, Shatterglass soared above them, shrieking about revenge while dripping a molten blob of glass into the alleyway as he passed them by. Adrian flinched as he eyed her back, which still had several glass shards protruding from it. Several moments passed in silence, and as Ladybug eyed the area around them warily, knowing that the danger had passed, Ladybug took a step forward and spun to face him. "Do you have a death wish lately? What on earth were you thinking attacking him the way you are?" she demanded as she reached over her shoulder and winced, pulling a shard of glass from her back. "That's exactly what I want to know," Plag demanded, shooting from his pocket to hover in the air. "If you keep doing stupid things like this, you'll be the fastest kitten to croak yet. I can't protect you as a civilian." Raising his hand somewhat defensively, Adrian looked between the 2 fuming beings before him. He had kids trapped, and there were too many people around to transform. I had to do something. Besides, Ladybug, you can't tell me you haven't or wouldn't do the same thing if you had been in my position." At his words, Ladybug looked a bit sheepish, but she still huffed and turned her back to him, glancing around the empty alleyway once more. "Transform so that we can get moving. But this conversation is so not done." Adrian sighed and glared up at Plag. "Don't distract me by yelling at me the whole time," he said, and Plag hissed at him. With a roll of his eyes, Adrian called, "Claws out, Plag!" And a moment later, Chat Noir stood in Adrian's place. Chat shifted a little in place, wondering if he should say something, since he was done. It almost felt awkward for some reason to change into Chat Noir like this, and he wondered why, since he did it in front of Marinette all the time these days. "It's my job to be annoying, by the way," Plag said in the back of his mind, causing Adrian to let out a small growl. Then he looked up and winced as he saw Ladybug's back. There were still 3 shards of glass sticking out of her, and she couldn't reach them although she was trying. It was then that he realized why he felt so awkward. Ladybug had been hurt because she had been there to protect him. Guilt ate at him, and he forced him to open up his mouth. "Ladybug, let me get those," Chat whispered, placing a gentle claw on her shoulder. Several spots of blood marked her suit, making him cringe, even as he swiftly pulled out the shards. New spots of blood marked their positions, and her shoulders relaxed as the last one pulled free. "Thanks, Chat. That feels much better now," Ladybug said, pressing one hand to his shoulder as she turned. His eyes were downcast, his face unreadable, and Ladybug sighed. "It's not your fault, so don't even think about it. We both get hurt all the time. Besides, it's just some glass, and it didn't hit anything vital." Chat nodded mutely. They had both been injured before. Scrapes, bumps, bruises, gashes. They were probably both covered in scars at this point. Chat had been injured the worst out of the 2 of them, but he was always more than happy to take a blow meant for Ladybug. "Yay, awkward moment. Can we please just catch the akuma so I can have my cheese?" Plagg demanded, making Chat snort with laughter. Ladybug raised an eyebrow and Chat waved her off, simply saying, "Plagg wants us to hurry so that he can go back to eating cheese." "Well, let's not keep him waiting then," Ladybug said with a smile, and the two of them launched themselves up out of the alley. The good thing about akuma was that, for the most part, they were easy to find. Usually, they focused on one person or one thing that had pissed them off. The few akuma that were ambiguous as to what caused their transformations were still easy to find, though, due to the insane amount of damage that they usually caused. No akuma really ran or hid. In fact, it was usually the two heroes that did most of the hiding when it came right down to it. Shatterglass was no exception. Glass covered the tops of houses, parts of the streets, and cars, as well as, to the hero's horror, people. They halted a moment next to one statue as Ladybug eyed it with apprehension. "Do you think that they're okay?" she asked, tracing a finger over the surprised, glassy stare that the statue had. "Well, any time someone's been transformed before, they've always been fine as soon as you release Miraculous Cleanse. So I don't see why not," Chad answered, and Ladybug nodded in agreement. "We should be close. Let's get this fixed before he turns more people into statues," Ladybug muttered, and together they ran down the street. They caught up with Shatterglass a few moments later, terrorizing a group of 3 kids that were in a large plaza, complete with benches and a fountain. It was one that the duo knew well, since most teenagers came here in the hotter months to hang out around the fountain's edge and relax in the cool spray. This group was a school group, and some sort, and they were terrified as Shatterglass approached them. Their teacher was already a statue off to the side, and as the duo landed in the plaza, they could see several students hiding by one of the entrances, watching in horror as Shatterglass raised the pipe to his lips again. One of the girls, who was probably all of 10, stepped between him and her 2 friends, arms spread wide as she glared at Shatterglass. "We didn't do anything wrong! Leave us alone!" the child shouted, and Shatterglass paused, giving them the moment they needed to attack. "Kids chat!" Ladybug snapped as they darted in. Throwing her yo-yo, she caught Shatterglass by the waist, and before he even registered the string, she hauled back, yanking him into the air away from the children. Torquing the string, As she pulled back, Ladybug slung Shatterglass into the nearest wall, firmly placing herself between him, Chat, and the children. As delicate as he seemed, Shatterglass landed on his feet with a musical tinkle, even as he left a dent in the wall. He seemed unfazed, and in the next instant his pipe was at his lips, glass shards shooting right at her. Ladybug spun her yo-yo rapidly, unwilling to dodge since Chat was hauling 2 of the scared children into his arms, as the third, braver child clung to his back like a monkey. As soon as Chat met the shadows at the fringes of the plaza, Ladybug threw herself sideways out of the path of the flying broken glass coming at her, jumping to her feet as the attack razed the space that she had just been in. "Is that all you've got?" Ladybug taunted, and Shatterglass paused for a brief second, as if he were contemplating something. Ladybug watched him even as she scanned the area, wondering where Chat had gotten up to. She had expected him to jump right back into the fight, but as of yet, she didn't see him. After a moment of silence, Shatterglass spoke. "I was going to save this trick for my other half to see, but I suppose there's no need." "Other half?" Ladybug questioned, then spun her yo-yo as Shatterglass raised the glass pipe to his lips again, without another word. He blew into it, twirling the pipe as a ball of hot glass came from the end. His other hand reached up, pouring flames, and Ladybug watched in awe as he molded the shape of what looked like a dragon in the span of less than a minute. As the tail pulled free of the pipe, the dragon expanded, growing almost as big as Shatterglass before it came to life, letting out the roar that sounded like a breaking glass. "Go, my pet!" Shatterglass called, and the dragon leapt forward at a stunned Ladybug. The eyes of the beast were yellow, while the rest of the creature was all swirled blues, except for the wings, claws, and horns, which were all a solid black. Its head was even with Ladybug's, and the beast gave another cry like breaking glass, before letting loose a breath attack that was entirely made of glass shards. Thankfully, even though her mind was still screaming, "Dragon?" her reflexes were wide awake and paying attention. Her yo-yo spun before him, wiping the shards out of existence, but Ladybug didn't think it would work quite as well on the dragon's main body. She tried anyways, smashing the yo-yo into the creature's side, causing the slightest chip to appear, but the blow didn't even put a dent in its charge for her. The beast's head snapped up and forward, its jaws closing inches from her leg as she jumped into the air. Planting her one hand on the beast's snout, she flipped over its head and landed on the thing's shoulders. Unfortunately, glass made for a very poor traction surface, and her feet slipped out from underneath her, causing her to straddle the beast's neck. The dragon roared and twisted, but Ladybug clung with her legs while her hands death gripped the spike in before her, so that she wasn't flung off. Letting loose one more cry, the dragon creature went still for the briefest of seconds. Then there was a sickening lurch as the dragon flapped its wings. "Please let me be too heavy for this thing to—" "Ah!" Ladybug shrieked as the beast took to the air far quicker than what should have been possible. The beast shot straight up into the air, and as they passed the roof of the building, Ladybug caught sight of an open-mouthed, shocked Chat. "Get Shatterglass!" Ladybug yelled in passing, hoping that he heard her. Shatterglass could not be allowed to make more of these creatures. Ladybug didn't even know what she was going to do with the one she was riding. The dragon in question shrieked and twisted upside down, losing altitude as it sprayed glass shards willy-nilly into the open air. Twisting back upright, it dove into the cloud of glass shards with a burst of sudden speed. Shards fell around them, forcing Ladybug to release her death grip on the spikes so that she could deflect the shards that seemed to be coming from every angle. The deadly cloud dispersed as they broke through to the other side, and Ladybug hoped that there was no one outside below them to get caught in that deadly rain of glass. The creature's mouth opened once more, ready to spray another barrage as it soared even higher, and Ladybug felt her stomach do a flip on its own as the beast twisted into a loop. "That's enough!" she cried, and threw her yo-yo so that it spun about the beast's snout, before coming back to her hand. Hauling back on the yo-yo, she forced the dragon's mouth closed, and as its head reared back, its wings stalled in the air. Like a ball reaching its peak, they hovered in the air, slowly coming to a stop. Ladybug held her breath as time seemed to slow, and then they were falling like a stone. The dragon pointed its head downwards to the ground, its claws slashing at the yo-yo string ineffectively. A high-pitched shriek filled the air, and Ladybug, it was her screaming as they fell. "Open your stupid wings!" Ladybug screamed as the ground rapidly approached. Chat was fighting with Shatterglass, preventing him from making more glass creatures, his claws making horrific screeching noises each time they scored a hit. Fire littered the courtyard, and Ladybug realized that they were diving right for the ground. An idea struck her as she suddenly remembered how she controlled the flying gator once upon a time, and on a hunch, she loosened the string. The dragon's wings snapped back open, and she cheered as their descent slowed, but not by nearly enough. In the next second, she jerked the string sideways, and the dragon's head followed, directing them right at the fighting Shatterglass and Chat. "Chat, move!" Ladybug cried, and jumped off the dragon's body, coming to a crashing halt on the hard cobbles, rolling away as she tried to kill her momentum. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Chat throw himself out of the way behind a small mail bin. Then the sound of glass shattering filled the air. Slowly, with a pain-filled groan, Ladybug uncurled herself and looked to where Shatterglass and his pet lay. The dragon looked far worse to the wear, its wing completely broken off and missing large chunks here and there of its body. Shatterglass shifted beneath the creature's bulk, and she saw that his glass-making pipe lying in the space between them. Scrambling to her feet, Ladybug rushed forward to scoop up the pipe when Chat yelled, "No, don't touch it!" It was already too late, though, and as her hand curled around the pipe, searing heat bit into her palm, making her drop the pipe and falling back in shock. The suit had protected her from the worst of the heat, but she could still feel the burn on her hand already forming. "How am I supposed to break something I can't touch?" Ladybug exclaimed, even as she tried to smash it with her yo-yo. The yo-yo dented the metal, but it didn't break, and no akuma came out. "No!" Shatterglass roared as she swung the yo-yo once more, and in the next second, Chat slammed into her, knocking them both out of the way as fire scorched the spot where they had been moments before. Once more they rolled to a halt, a whimper escaping the space between them, and Ladybug pulled back to find a small pair of brown eyes looking up at her. "Chat?" Ladybug exclaimed, as she realized that she was looking into a child's eyes. Chat winced as they both rolled to their feet, and he kept a firm grip on the kid. "I couldn't leave him behind, the mail bin, and you were about to become crispy," Chat whined, and the child nodded. "I wanted to come," the child squeaked, and both superheroes looked down at the kid in surprise before shaking their head. "We need to get you out of harm's way, so we can do our job, okay, kid?" Ladybug asked with a grin, and she ruffled their hair. "I'm pretty sure the akuma's in her pipe, but I couldn't break the tube, and it's too hot to touch." Chat nodded, then yelped, "Move!" as he snatched the child back up into his arms. They leapt away from each other in the next instant, as fire and shards of glass sprayed the area. The dragon and Shatterglass were back up, and Shatterglass was using his flamethrower attached to the arm to shoot fire at him. The dragon was the one spraying the glass, covering its master as Shatterglass raced for his pipe. Ladybug moved towards the pipe too, capturing Shatterglass's full attention. Fire scorched the air around Ladybug as she used her spinning yo-yo to prevent herself from becoming crispy, while Chat dodged the dragon glass breath, all while keeping the child tucked behind his body. The dragon lost a piece of its leg in a sound of tinkling glass as it moved forward, with cracks running through the beast everywhere. It looked as if it were ready to fall apart at any second, and yet, for some reason, it still rushed after Chat and the child. Ladybug watched in horror as the dragon slashed at Chat from behind, its claws slicing through his suit and his skin. He cried out as the child screamed in terror, and Ladybug abandoned the fight to prevent Shatterglass from getting his pipe. Chat was more important to her. The child's life was more important to her. Shatterglass's pipe could wait. Twisting around, Chat swung his staff back, forcing the dragon to back off as he slung the child behind him. The kids stumbled back several steps, just barely managing to stay on their feet, and the dragon reared on its back legs, claws flashing in the sunlight as its jaws opened once more. "Run, kid!" Chat snapped, knowing full well that he wouldn't be able to stop a breath attack and its claws at the same time. The child ran, and as the first shards started to come from the back of the dragon's blue-swirled throat, a red yo-yo zipped around its jaws, snapping them shut with a crash. Ladybug hauled back on the line harder, pulling the dragon's head sideways and pulling the beast off balance. Chat darted forward into the opening, his baton swinging at a thin crack he could just make out, where the chest joined the neck, all the while avoiding the creature's flailing claws. A loud crack at the collusion echoed across the plaza, and the dragon froze mid-swipe. Jumping back, Chat watched a little shocked, as cracks webbed across the beast's body. Then with a grinding, crunching sound, the dragon literally fell to pieces. A grin spread across his face as he looked up into Ladybug's eyes, seeing the look of relief on her face. Then, in the next instant, everything went to hell once more. Shatterglass had reclaimed his weapon, and as soon as he had the pipe in hand, he raised it to his lips. There was no way for Ladybug to avoid the blow, especially not one that she couldn't even see coming. Her yo-yo was already retracting, but it wouldn't get to her hand in time. Her eyes were still on Chat, and the shattered remains of the dragon between them. Ladybug had saved him once more, at the cost of not seeing the danger that lurked right behind her. Chat hated moments like these. Moments where he could see everything that was about to go wrong, and yet he was completely helpless to stop it. It was moments like these that he would brace himself before throwing himself on the mercy of Ladybug's luck, in the hopes that whatever blow he was about to take wouldn't be bad enough to hurt her as well. Sometimes, though, their luck just didn't hold out, and somehow he realized that this was one of those moments. "Look out!" Chat screamed, already lunging for her, but it was far too late, and he knew that this time he wouldn't make it. Glass sprayed from the end of the Shatterglass's pipe, and whether it was luck, his warning, or simple instinct, Chat would never know. Jumping sideways and back, Ladybug managed to avoid a direct deadly blow. However, she didn't escape completely unscathed. Ladybug's eyes blew wide as Shatterglass tore into her side and arm, the spray hitting with enough force to knock her spinning in the air towards the ground. That look was instantly and forever burned in Chat's memory, as fragments of glass struck her, and planting the baton he had, he launched himself forward, catching her before she hit into the unforgiving ground. Chat didn't stop moving as his feet hit the ground, and Ladybug hissed in pain as she dodged another one of Shatterglass's attacks, jolting her in the process. They were in the open, and they needed a place to hide, and as if she could hear his thoughts, Ladybug spoke up, even as he flung himself back to avoid some more fire that Shatterglass blasted their way. "Fountain, Chat!" Ladybug grunted, and the next second he ducked down behind the rim as fire baked the wall inches away from them. As gently as he could, Chat placed Ladybug on the ground, panic singing through his veins as he saw the shredded suit and bloody skin beneath it. Blood already coated her side, darkening her suit and the bits of glass that shimmered from the wound, practically winking as the sun played across the sharp edges. With a grimace, Ladybug looked down at the wound and shuddered, before pulling a shard of glass from her arm that was preventing her from moving her elbow properly. The suits and the Kwami's magic gave them a far higher pain tolerance than normal human beings. Ladybug knew that if she had been hit with such an attack as a normal human, she would be unconscious, either from the pain or the shock. Even with all that, though, her head swam, and from the pain burning through her side and the feel of her blood steadily soaking her skin, it was enough to make her nauseous. "Marinette, focus! You can't lose consciousness now!" Tiki cried within her mind, jolting her back awake, and her eyes flickered open to see Chat crouch before her, a look of loss and helplessness plastered across his face. "Ladybug," Chat whimpered, unsure of what to do. They were pinned on the wrong side of the fountain to make a clean escape, and Ladybug was badly injured, and it was all his fault. He hadn't protected her like he was supposed to, and now she had been badly injured because of it. Wincing as a spray of glass dusted them with broken shards and concrete, he jumped a little as Ladybug's voice broke the silence. We need to finish this quickly, before I pass out from blood loss," Ladybug managed, shifting so that she could rise to her knees. Chat's eyes nearly popped from his head. "What?" he exclaimed. "No, no, no, and no. I'm taking you to the hospital." Ladybug raised an eyebrow at him, although he could see that she was desperately trying to put on a brave face. Tears edged the corner of her eyes, lips were pressed into a firm line, and her face was white from the pain. Briefly, it crossed her mind to try to staunch the blood flow by pressing a hand to the shredded skin, but that turned out to be a really bad idea. Even as she pressed one hand to the blood-slicked side, she immediately froze and flinched away, as the pressure made the embedded shards dig deeper. Chat shifted, reaching for her, and Ladybug could tell that he was freaking out as a small puddle of blood began to form by her side. The glass had hit something major, or it had cut deep enough that there was a lot of damaged vessels. Either way, it hurt like hell, and Ladybug didn't want to think of how she would explain to a hospital how she got these injuries as a civilian. "No hospital, Chat. We don't have the time," Ladybug answered, blocking his hand with a gentle touch. And in the next instant, she threw her yo-yo into the air, crying, "Lucky charm!" Light coalesced from the yo-yo, and a second later, a polka-dotted tube fell into her hands. It was made of a pliable rubber, a little over a foot long, and the base of the one side was several inches of diameter. "What in the world?" she muttered, looking around, even glancing over the rim of the fountain for a brief second. Ducking back down with a bit of a whimper from the pain, Ladybug said, "He's coming towards us. Shatterglass knows he's got us pinned." Chat nearly jumped out of his skin as fire scorched the place where her head had been just seconds ago. "Someone needs to cool off," Chat muttered, dropping in his crouch even lower, as the heat made him uncomfortably warm. Ladybug gasped suddenly, her eyes lighting up as she looked at the polka-dotted tube once more. You're a genius, Chat! That's it! I've got a plan. Use Cataclysm on the fountain, and we can spray him with the water. That will allow us to grab and break his pipe." Chat faltered for a moment at the compliment, then frowned as what she said sank in. Opened his mouth to argue. Ladybug stopped him with a glare before he could get a word out. I'm injured, Chat, not dead. Please, it's our only chance, she begged, and Chat growled. She's right. It's the best chance you've got. Hop to it before she actually does bleed to death, Plague chimed in, this time making Chat snarl out loud and making Ladybug jump. For the record, I hate this. Cataclysm! Chat snarled and launched himself right over her head, planting his palm into the top of the fountain. The water fountain's facade crumbled, revealing pipes that instantly blew as the pressure regulators went out. Water shot into the air unrestrained, and Ladybug somehow made it to her feet to be at his side as she tried to shove the tube into place over the broken pipes. Understanding dawned on him even as the water soaked them, turning the water pink from her blood, and Chat reached out helping her shove the tube into place. Shatterglass was a mere few feet away from them, just on the other side of the rim of the fountain, already raising his pipes to his lips, a nasty smirk and a purple mask lining his face. Smirk on this, Chat snarled, and without even having to be told, Chat bent the tube forward, shooting an untamed jet of water right into Shatterglass's face. Steam burst away from him and the pipe as there came a garbled yelling sound. Shatterglass flailed in the water stream, stumbling back as the pipe dulled to a vibrant akumified purple, instead of the bright cherry red color it had been all day. Ladybug moved, throwing her yo-yo so that it wrapped around the pipe, and yanked it from Shatterglass's now slippery grip. Shatterglass went down, and Chat kept the spray on him to ensure that he stayed that way. The yo-yo snapped back to Ladybug's hand, and she was relieved to find the pipe cool to the touch once more. No more evil-doing for you, little Akuma, Ladybug snapped, ignoring the pain in her side as she sloshed forward and made it to the fountain's edge. In the next instant, she smashed the pipe into the ground, causing the brittle metal to break apart. A purple butterfly wiggled its way free, and before it could escape, she caught the butterfly in her yo-yo. Gotcha! Ladybug cried, even as she collapsed to the water, her yo-yo snapping back to her hand. The water turned pink around her once more, and for a moment, Ladybug felt herself start to tilt forward. Marinette, you're losing too much blood! You need to get up! Tiki cried in her mind, and Ladybug's eyes fluttered back open once more. Ladybug! Chat yelled, splashing to her side, her lucky charm in hand. I'm okay, Chat. Just catching my breath for a second, Ladybug lied, as he gently pulled her back to her feet. Leaning against him, she put a finger to the yo-yo, releasing the trapped butterfly. Bye-bye, little butterfly, they murmured together, watching the white creature float up into the air. She let her yo-yo drop from her hand, and Chat pressed the tube into her hand in the yo-yo's place. Do you need my help? Chat asked, concern laced through his voice. Ladybug looked up at him and smiled, even as she shook her head. You take worse blows for me all the time, Chaton. Besides, don't think I don't see those claw marks on your back. Then, in one fluid movement, she tossed the tube up into the air, calling, Miraculous Cleanse! The healing light burst forth, cleaning up the fountain, healing them both, and fixing all the other things that had been damaged in the fight. Ladybug sighed as the light passed over her, fixing her costume, and she heard Chat sigh in relief as well. Together, they climbed from the water, as both of their miraculous beeped, and the man who had been Shatterglass sat up looking dazed. What's going on? How did I get here? The man warbled. Chat glanced at Ladybug, who, despite the healing, still looked rather gray and a little weak. You get going, Ladybug. I'll handle him. Ladybug nodded. I'll wait for you on the roof. I have something I need to tell you. Chat pressed a claw to his chest. Are you going to confess your undying love for my puns, my lady? Ladybug snorted, rolling her eyes. Better hurry. We only have a few minutes, she replied, and started walking towards the alleyway on the other side of the plaza. Chat grinned and scooping up the now-fixed glassmaker's pipe, he walked back to the confused, de-akumified man's side. Here's your pipe, sir. You were akumified. The man blinked up at him, and with a shaking hand took his pipe. My wife. Did you stop her as well? Is she okay? Chat paused, staring at the man in total confusion. You were the only one akumified, sir. We haven't—" "No!" the man yelled, grabbing Chat's hand. We were working on our jointed masterpiece. She was working in metal and I was working in glass. We were going to color it shattered iron. This was all my fault. Because of the contest and that jealous bastard. I egged him on since I knew we did better work. The other artist was jealous. He told me if I took the contest commission I would regret it. Those punks did his dirty work and we came in this morning. Everything was gone. It was destroyed." The man's voice was sad, compelling, and as he looked up into Chat's eyes, he could see the misery there. "The butterfly took her first. I tried to stop her, but I was confused, terrified, and I was so very angry when I saw her transform. It's in the glass pendant I gave her. I tried to smash it with my pipe, but I don't remember what happened next." Chat couldn't believe what he was hearing. He didn't want to believe it, and yet he had to know. "What are you saying, sir?" The man's eyes grew wide as panic filled them. You don't know. You haven't seen her. It wasn't just me. It was the both of us." Dread spiked through Chat, leaving him cold despite the heat of the day. They hadn't seen any other Akuma while fighting Shatterglass. And yet, suddenly, the oddness of their first interaction made sense. The molten puddle in his use of R instead of my, when addressing the non-existent masterpiece. "No. Oh no. Is that even possible? Two Akuma at the same time?" Chat cried, his head spinning about as he saw Ladybug land on the roof, on the other side of the plaza. "It is possible for Hawkmoth to make two Akuma in the same day, just as it's possible for us to transform twice in one day. So, two at the same time would be possible, although it would wear the poor Kwame out to do so," Flag answered, and the worried tone of his Kwame's voice made Chat swallow hard. They were in no shape to fight a second Akuma right now, and both of their Miraculous were about to wear off. If the man was right, and Chat believed him wholeheartedly, the other Akuma was probably nearby. "Find some place to hide. We'll find your wife," Chat snapped, a little harsher than he meant it to. He didn't wait to hear another thing the man said, as he broke his grip and darted forward, yelling, "Ladybug!" She spun around to face him, staring down from the rooftop, looking confused as he ran closer. Ladybug could hear the panicked tone in his voice, and that made her wonder what was going on. She hadn't wanted to admit it, but things felt a little strange to her, even though the battle with Shatterglass had ended. The city was still far too quiet. It was like it was holding its breath, and it made her skin crawl. "Something is wrong," Tiki squeaked. "Yeah, no kidding, but what?" Ladybug retorted. Then in the next moment, she had her answer. "Shatterglass wasn't alone! There are two Akuma!" Chat screamed, as he closed the distance between them. Her eyes went wide, and a flicker of movement off to the side was all the warning that she had. Something metal and vaguely baseball-shaped swung at her into her peripheral vision, and she heard Chat holler something as it collided with her skull. Stars exploded with pain behind Ladybug's eyelids, and darkness swamped her, even as Tiki's screams echoed in her mind. Ladybug fell. Everything moved in slow motion, and Chat couldn't move fast enough. It felt as if he were having a nightmare that made him slow, clumsy, and left him unable to speak. His warning had come too late, and it was obvious that Shatterglass's wife had been waiting in wait for him. From Chat's angle on the ground, he couldn't see anyone, but he did see the blunt metal object crack into Ladybug's skull, sending her flying off the edge of the roof. Terror and self-loathing surged through Chat as she tumbled limply through the air. Ladybug had been hurt yet again. She had fallen for the second time that day because Chat felt he hadn't been fast enough. "No!" he roared, finally managing to speak as he slammed the baton into the ground, launching himself forward at her falling form. Less than 5 feet from the ground, Chat caught her, curling his body tight around hers before crashing back first into the pavement. They hit hard enough that they continued sliding, only coming to a halt at the edge of the sidewalk. Almost immediately, he was sitting up, his throat constricted to the point where he couldn't even speak. Shaking her slightly, Chat pressed a shaky finger to her neck when she didn't respond. Her pulse beat slow but strong beneath his fingertips, and he could see her chest rise as she took a breath. He could smell blood, though, and after a moment he realized that it was her head that was bleeding. It was a small trickle, and as he pressed a clawed hand to the spot, Chat could already feel the egg-shaped knot forming there. "Ladybug?" he finally managed, his voice coming out as a squeak. Their miraculous beeped in time together, and he realized that they both had less than 3 minutes before they changed back. "Adrian, we need to run! The akuma's coming!" Plag yelled in his mind, and Chat jumped in surprise. Scrambling to his feet, Chat held Ladybug close in bridal style to him, while looking around only to realize that he was alone, and surrounded by statues made of what looked like metal. "Finally you hear me! Run, you idiot, before the akuma comes after you two!" Plag yelled again, making Chat wince. Sheer self-preservation took over as his words sank in, and Chat sprinted away, even as he heard the once akumified man yell, "Fight it, dear heart! You have to fight it!" in terror. Ladybug would probably be mad at him for leaving a defenseless citizen in harm's way, but to him, Ladybug's life was far more precious than anyone else's, with the exception of Marinette's, of course. "Rise, walkers, and capture that cat!" a woman's voice cried from behind them, and with a sudden shriek, the metal statues began to move. "Oh, hell," Plag and Chat said at the same time as the statues turned to face him. "Run! Run!" Plag snapped, driving Chat Mind into full flight mode. Dodging metal hands and leaping past the street in a single bound, Chat fled the scene. The statues followed, or at least tried to. Chat was very good at dodging, and after getting cut off on the street, he leapt to the rooftops. As he ran, he knew they needed a place to hide. Paris was far too quiet, and the statues were everywhere. He was quickly realizing that Shatterglass had been a distraction of sorts, while his wife had set up what looked like an army. Gotta hide, Chat muttered to himself as he leapt from building top to building top. His panic-driven flight made him pick a building at random, and seeing more metal statues moving near the entrance, he kicked open a door at the side entrance, wincing a little too late at the noise that it made. Darting up the first flight of stairs, he paused at the first door he saw. Noise of some kind echoed behind it, and Chat didn't want to wait to find out if it was a person or a statue. He flew up 2 more floors before pausing once more, his breath coming in gasps. Holding his breath for a brief moment, he listened, and when he heard nothing behind the door, he let the air whoosh out before pushing the door open ever so slightly. Darkness greeted him in the floor beyond, and with the ambient light coming in from the windows over the cubicles, Chat realized that he was in an office building of some kind. There was no movement or sound, and still panting, Chat moved into the room, trying to close the door as quietly as possible since he could now hear clanking coming from the stairwell. Chat jotted down 2 halls he picked at random, trying office doors as he passed. Most of them were locked, and the 2 that weren't wouldn't pass for any kind of good hiding spot. A door tucked at the very end of the hall was his last hope, and as he tried the door handle, he found that he could just make out the sound of a door opening in the direction he had just come from. The door beneath his hand swung open, revealing a supply closet of some kind, with boxes piled high along the back. Chat could keep going down the hall. It broke off from this point and went in 2 more directions. However, he didn't know if he would come across another open door like this, and he could hear movement coming from what seemed like all directions. Ducking in, Chat closed the door softly behind him, and he realized that there was no lock on the door. "Of course I couldn't be that lucky," Chat grumbled, and eyed the boxes before him. They were set right up against the wall, but it would be a simple task to move a few of them so that they could hide behind him. Their miraculous beeped again, and if nothing else, that made his mind up. His only problem was that he had to set Ladybug down for a brief moment to shift the boxes. Chat didn't want to let her go, his instincts wanting to override his common sense because they were in danger and she was injured. A small growl slipped past his lips as he forced himself to set her down so that he could shift the boxes before him. "Plag, distract me, please," Chat whispered. Plag was all too happy to immediately launch into a discussion about how great cheese was and comparing it to the taste of his favorite cheese with others. I said distract me, not make me sick, Chat grumbled, but his heart wasn't in it, and Plag ignored him. Working fast, Chat managed to finish making a human-sized cubbyhole with the boxes piled high on either sides, when he heard Ladybug let out a small groan that hurt his heart twisting in his chest. Plag went silent instantly, and he was at her side, a quick glance through the darkness telling her that she had but a single dot left on her earrings. "Ladybug?" he whispered, reaching out to run a gentle claw over her cheek. Her eyes briefly fluttered as she tried to move, reaching for him in the darkness. "Adrian?" Chat felt as if he had been sucker-punched, as he swiftly clasped his hands around hers, trying to offer some sort of comfort. Her own hand clenched down briefly, and he wondered if that she was really waking up, or if this was something else entirely. "I'm here," he said, not knowing what else to do. Don't let go," she managed, her body relaxing as she slipped back into unconsciousness. "I won't, milady," Chat whimpered, pressing his cheek to one of her now limp hands. "She wasn't really awake, you know," Plag whispered in his mind, able to sense the turmoil those words had caused. I know, but she saved me twice, and I just—" He froze, listening hard. Noise arose from somewhere within the building. He could hear people yelling, the clanging of metal and running feet. Ladybug's Miraculous gave its final warming beeps, and swiftly he lifted her up into his arms before practically vaulting himself into the cubbyhole, clutching her tight to him. Pink light filled the room, and he snapped his eyes closed as her transformation fully wore off. "Plag, claws in," Chat said, his voice whisper-soft. "Are you sure? Those noises don't sound like people," Plag answered. "If necessary, I can hang on a bit longer." Chat shook his eyes still clamped shut. "We'll be safer in civilian form, even if it isn't people. Besides, I need to be back at full power as soon as possible." "He's right, Plag. Besides, you won't be able to hold on for much longer anyways," a female voice said, and Adrian just barely managed to keep his eyes shut as he jumped. Green light flashed before his closed eyelids, and Plag spoke up before he could. "Hello, Tiki. Is your girl okay?" Adrian cracked an eye open, only to see black. With an almost sigh of relief, he fully opened his eyes and noticed an adorable red creature hovering less than a foot away. Her glow gave her away in the darkness, although it wasn't enough for him to see much else around him by. As he stared at her, her glow dimmed further, and Plag flew up right beside her to nuzzle his head against hers. "She has a concussion, I'm pretty sure, but it's already healing. Usually I would say she shouldn't stay asleep, but she'll heal faster this way, especially with the after effects of Miraculous Cleanse in effect still," Tika replied, returning the nuzzle before turning to face Adrian. "Since Plag doesn't seem to know how to introduce anything, my name is Tiki, and I'm Ladybug's Kwame." Right. I'm Adrian. It's nice to meet you," Adrian whispered, taking in the adorable, friendly Kwame. Tiki giggled. "I know who you are. Ladybug talks about you a lot, and I see you a lot, too." "Right. I think I need to sit," Adrian muttered, feeling a touch sick at her words, and he slowly lowered himself to the ground with Ladybug on top of him. The space that they were in wasn't very big, so he turned Ladybug in her eyes so that she was laying across him instead of the floor. That done, he wrapped his arms around her, taking comfort in the fact that he could feel her heartbeat as her chest slowly rose and fell beneath his arms. He rested his chin on her head, and as the two Kwame floated lower, they shared a look. "Are you okay, Adrian?" Tiki asked, eyeing Plag as he settled without a word into his boy's hair. Adrian felt tears prickle across his eyes, and he took a deep breath, letting the feeling wash through him, rather than try to fight it. "It should have been me. She never should have been hurt. I couldn't protect her," he finally managed, a single tear slipping down his cheek. Plag began to purr, sending soothing vibrations down Adrian's spine, as Tiki flew right up into his face, catching the tear in her tiny paws. "Oh, Adrian, She's alive because you caught her when she fell. You did your job, Tiki squeaked, giving his cheek a floating hug. I, I, I just, she will wake up, right? He asked, his voice filled with haunting emotion. Of course she's gonna wake up, silly. She was up really late last night, so it's probably why she's sleeping now, Tiki answered, her bright tone thawing out the shard of icy fear that was stuck in his chest. With a sigh, Adrian relaxed a fraction, then jumped as a grumble came from the Kwame before him. Tiki clutched at her tummy, her bright blue eyes looking pleading as she gazed up at him. Do you have any cookies? She asked. Adrian couldn't help but smile, the slight smile that twitched his lips as he shook his head. Unfortunately, these aren't my normal clothes, so I don't even have any cheese for Plag. Plag instantly stopped purring. You don't have any cheese? I'm gonna starve, he moaned, slipping sideways off of Adrian's head. Tiki, when I die, don't forget me. Oh, Plag, don't be such a baby. We can go find something to eat, Tiki answered. Wait, will you be okay on your own? I can't leave Ladybug, and I'm pretty sure this building isn't safe to wander around in at this point. I would hate for you guys to get captured accidentally, Adrian murmured, keeping his voice down as sounds echoed from within the building again, and Tiki nuzzled his cheek. Don't worry, we'll be fine. If we don't want to be held by something, there's very little that can keep us contained. Besides, we need to eat something so that we can transform once Ladybug wakes back up. Adrian sighed. Go ahead then. Just be careful, and make sure the Plag doesn't do anything stupid, please. I resent that, Plag complained. Tiki giggled. We'll be back soon, Adrian. We'll even take a look around outside and see if we can figure out what's going on. Yeah, don't you do anything stupid, kid, Plag grumbled, then licked Adrian's cheek suddenly. Adrian jumped, then cried, Ew, Plag, what the heck? Plag snorted. Just checking, he answered mysteriously, and grabbed Tiki before taking off through the wall. Adrian sighed, settling farther against the wall trying to relax, and failing miserably. It was too quiet in the closet now that the Kwame had left, and now that the noises echoed through the building, they made him more tense, even more tense as time went on. Ladybug trembled in his arms after a while, and Adrian paused, loosening his arms as she muttered, Warm, before snuggling closer to him. A blush heated his face, and he sat up, holding her to him with one arm, as he slipped the jacket he wore off and draped it around her instead. A few minutes more passed, and she sighed, curling against him, her breath evening out as she stopped trembling entirely. Please, wake up soon, Ladybug, Adrian murmured, letting his eyes close and his mind finally drift off. He didn't know how long he stayed asleep, but visions of Ladybug lying injured before him had him snapping awake again with a gasp. He was still in the closet, with Ladybug still laid curled against him, warm and for the moment, safe. You okay, kid? Plag asked, making Adrian jump. What? Oh, I didn't know you guys were back. Did you guys find something to eat? Adrian asked, avoiding the question entirely. Plag sighed and curled into a ball on his shoulder, leaving Tiki to answer instead. We did, although Plag complained the whole time because he couldn't find any of his favorite cheese, Tiki answered, floating up in front of his face. Yeah, that sounds about right, Adrian chuckled, even as Plag kneaded his skin with his sharp little claws. Ouch! Plag, stop that! You know that hurts, Adrian hissed, and Plag shifted, curling his body into the space between his collar and his neck. Well, if you weren't so bony, I wouldn't have to. Why'd you take off your jacket anyways? It was comfy. Adrian rolled his eyes and Tiki giggled, before settling himself on the other side. Ladybug was cold, and all I have is my jacket. Were you guys able to see anything while you were getting food? Well, the akuma's name is Ironclaw, and she seems to have metal-type abilities. She's the one that made the people into statues. Most people are hiding since they know you guys already fought one akuma today, Tiki said softly. Adrian's shoulders slumped. They're counting on us to fix things, and because of me, we're stuck in here. Tiki buzzed against him, a startling sensation that had him jumping even as she flew up to face him, while Plag curled a little tighter on his other side with a murmured, "Uh-oh." "Don't you dare think that this is your fault, young man," Tiki buzzed, glowing brighter as she flew right into his face, her tiny paws waving adorably. "It's true. You are her partner and there to protect her, but this in no way, shape, or form is your fault. Ladybug loves you, and she would never want to be faced with a situation where there are two akuma at the same time. How do you think she feels when you get injured for her? There have been nights when she cries herself to sleep because of your recklessness or injuries, so don't even start." Adrian cringed before the furious little Kwame, his guilt only magnifying at her words. She opened up her mouth probably to yell some more at him when she saw the look on his face. Almost instantly, Tiki deflated and nuzzled herself against his cheek, her aura dimming as she calmed back down. "Never feel sorry for the things that are out of your control. You always do your absolute best, and Ladybug knows that. You two kids are the best team we've had in centuries, and you treat each other as equals. Now, you really should try to get some rest." Her piece said, Tiki fluttered back down to her spot on his other shoulder and curled up in silence. "I would have warned you earlier, but you really shouldn't make Tiki mad when she's worried," Plag grumbled against his skin. "I am not mad, Plag, and you should have been the one telling him that, you lazy cat," Tiki buzzed again, creating a tickling sensation that had Adrian chuckling. "Yeah, but you do it so much better," Plag purred. Tiki huffed. "Go to sleep, you lazy thing." "Gladly," Plag purred, and Adrian had to laugh at the two Kwame's interactions. "You two sound like an old married couple," Adrian snickered. Both Kwames stiffened. Then as one, all three of them laughed, the tension from the day easing off as they did so. "Get some rest, kid. We'll be moving as soon as Ladybug wakes," Plag said, as they settled down once more. Feeling slightly better, Adrian allowed his eyes to close, drifting off once more. The two Kwames sensed the moment he started to dream, his whole body tensing beneath them. "He has nightmares too?" Tiki asked, and Plag sighed. "They always do. These guys are so young, too. They should only have nightmares about showing up to school naked, not watching their partners get killed as they watch helplessly," Plag complained, his voice soft and sad. "Agreed. But all we can do at this point is comfort them when we wake. At least they have each other. That's more than what several of their predecessors had," Tiki replied. Plag chuckled. "I can't wait for your girl to reveal herself. Adrian's gonna have a heart attack." "I hope not. She already feels guilty for keeping it a secret this long," Tiki sighed, then started to hum in comfort as the boy trembled again. She could hear Plag purring on the other side, and with a soft hum she whispered, "Wake up soon, Marinette. Adrian needs you." Adrian drifted in and out, waking fully to wake when talk with the Kwames once more. After reflecting on the past days, Adrian had finally come to the unhappy realization that there was nothing he could have done to change anything. It didn't make him feel any better, but it didn't make him feel any worse either. After a while, sleep was a thing that simply would not come to him, although he made sure to stay relaxed so that the Kwame could at least get some rest themselves. The only problem with remaining still was that his butt had slowly been going numb. Adrian didn't know how long he had been sitting, although at this point he was completely numb, so it had to have been several hours. Slowly, he tried shifting, not wanting to wake the Kwame up, when suddenly Ladybug gave a small groan and stretched one arm up, shifting the jacket on her. Warm kitty," she murmured, turning slightly, accidentally causing her hip to dig into Adrian's gut. He grunted in pain, arms clenching around her as he tried to stop her from moving any further, then froze as he heard her draw in a sharp breath. Realizing what he was doing, Adrian loosened his arms, not wanting to alarm her as she stopped squirming. A hand pressed against his chest and slowly felt its way up, hitting Plag as it reached his shoulder. "Watch it!" Plag yelled, startled awake, and Ladybug yelped, trying to scramble back from the Kwame, and Adrian not knowing where she was. Twisting, her one hand pressed into his chest, and Plag flew off his shoulder as the other hand crashed back into the same spot, narrowly missing him as she tried to push herself upright in the small space. Ladybug! Hey, it's okay, you're safe! Adrian yelped as a hand smacked against his chin and a knee went into his gut, as the other fell to the ground, leaving him half straddling his lap. Ladybug froze, and Tiki flew off his shoulder in an instant, light bulb bright, launching herself into her chosen's face. You're awake! We were so worried. Adrian has been freaking out. And how are you feeling? Is your head okay? Ladybug giggled, cupping her hands and snuggling her Kwame as she answered softly, I'm okay, Tiki. I'm so sorry I worried you, but my head is fine, I think. It hurts a little, but other than that, I'm good. Tiki's glow lit up her face as she cuddled into her cheek, and Adrian felt his world freeze, then shatter into a million pieces. Gah, ma, you, Adrian managed, his jaw working but no sound coming out. Plag floated up next to Marinette's ear, his bright green eyes filled with dark mischief. Looks like the bug's finally out of the bag. I think you broke him, though, Plag cackled. Marinette froze, realizing where she was, who she was on, and her bright blue eyes widened like saucers. Oops, Tiki managed, then flew up out of her hand as Marinette reached forward worriedly. Adrian? Are you okay? She asked, shifting so that her other knee was no longer in his gut and on the floor. Marinette! He screeched suddenly, and Marinette flinched back at his sudden exclamation. Yes, she answered, her tone hesitant. I kind of thought, but... Adrian stuttered, emotion steamrolling through him, leaving him incapable of forming a coherent sentence. I'm sorry, Adrian. I really wanted to tell you, but you didn't want to know last time. And then we both got sick, and there hasn't been any akuma attacks, and I couldn't find the right moment, and I'm just a stupid, klutzy fool, and... Marinette rambled, her hands waving, causing Tiki to dodge and fly over to Adrian's side. Adrian jerked forward, his arms wrapping around her and pulling her tight against him, before burying his face into her shoulder for a long moment. Finally, he found his voice, lifting his face so that he could look her in the eyes. It's you. Thank God it's you. I'm so sorry, Marinette. I'm so very sorry. He buried his face into her shoulder again before she could say anything, and Marinette wrapped her arms around him, holding him close as he shuddered against her. Shh, kitty, it's okay. Hey, this just means that we can go on dates as civilian or heroes. What's wrong, Adrian? Talk to me, Marinette whispered, cradling as best as she could, sitting on his lap like she was. I could have lost you. Marinette, I can't lose you. Adrian started, only to freeze mid-sentence as a crash echoed right outside the door. The door blasted inwards, splinters smashing the boxes as Adrian rolled Marinette to the floor, arching over her to protect her from the boxes as they fell around them. The two Kwame huddled in the space between them, and Marinette looked stunned at how fast he had moved. I think we're out of time. Plag, claws out, Adrian hissed. We are so not done talking. Tiki, spots on, Marinette answered, closing her eyes against the matching flashes of magic. Come out, a metallic voice demanded. Ladybug and Chat Noir's eyes met, then they nodded as one. Boxes blasted away as they leapt free, taking out the two metal people that were standing where the door had once been. Chat took the lead since he had brought them in, and he used his baton to knock a statue person out of the way as they sprinted down the hall. What happened while I was knocked out? Ladybug demanded, as they cleared another two statues and ended up in the office cubicle area. Three statues stood near the door, preventing an escape out the stairwell, and it only took a glance at the windows for both of them to come to silent agreement. It turns out there were two akuma, Shatterglass and his wife who's calling herself Ironclaw. She's the one that knocked you out. While we were fighting Shatterglass, I think she was running around making these statue people. Although there's way more now than before, Chat replied, and together they leapfrogged over the cubicles swiftly, making their way towards the windows. Great! So now we have to watch out for more than one akuma at a time? Ladybug groaned, tossing her yo-yo as she landed on stable ground, and in one swift movement, Ladybug shattered the upper open window with her yo-yo. I don't think so. According to the Kwami, it takes a lot of energy to do something like this, so I don't think it'll be a regular thing. If we go a while without akuma attacks, we might need to worry, though, Chad answered, and then laced his fingers together as she finished clearing the glass. Statues came around the corner from either side, shuffling towards them, and Ladybug took a running leap into his cupped hands before he boosted her up and out through the high cleared window. With an ironic suit at the shambling statues, he followed her a moment later, using his baton, and they both paused on the high window frame, staring out across the city. "It's quiet. Too quiet," Chat said, and Ladybug groaned. "Really, Chat? Isn't that a little cliché, even for you?" A grin bloomed across his face, and he couldn't help but chuckle, the chuckle that slipped out. "Nothing is too cliché for me, lady." "Surrender now," metallic voices echoed from underneath them, bringing them both back to focusing on the task at hand. The statuified people were collecting underneath the window, reaching up in jerky motions as they pressed tighter together. Chat shivered suddenly. "Okay, that's creepy. It's like they're zombies or something." Ladybug groaned. "Please don't say that." She paused for a second, eyeing the people, and jumped as they all started chanting, "Surrender now." "Ugh! Damn it, Chat! Now that's all I'm going to be able to picture them as," she grumbled. "Well, let's get moving before she turns any more people. We should be able to clean this mess up pretty quick before it gets dark," Chat chuckled, even as he eyed the slowly setting sun. They still had a few hours of daylight left, and he hated having to fight in the dark, mostly because Ladybug couldn't see nearly as well as he could. "Agreed. Let's go to where you saw her last," Ladybug answered. Together, with Chat in the lead, they swung and leapt across Paris once more. The statues wandered the streets, and once or twice they even ran out into a few on the roofs. The statue people were easy to knock off the roof, and thankfully, whatever material coated their bodies protected them from any injuries. The first time Ladybug had accidentally knocked one off, she had freaked, thinking that she had accidentally killed someone. They had both run to the edge and had been relieved to find them climbing to their feet and wandering off once more. "Definitely zombies," Chat commented, and Ladybug had punched him hard. Now, they were working their way up the streets and plazas, keeping within each other's line of sight, as they searched for Ironclaw. She hadn't been in the plaza where they had fought Shatterglass, although her husband still was. He was a golden statue, with one arm raised, pipe still in hand, his mouth open in protest. Chat discovered her first, and he swiftly ducked behind a chimney as he called out to Ladybug. "I've got her down in the street," he called, and he could see Ladybug change direction, swiftly making her way over to him. She arrived a moment later, and the two of them moved to the edge of the building once more, staying out of sight as they spied. A woman down below was in a skin-tight suit that was a swirl of metallical colors. Her hair was a solid copper and curly so that it hung down her back in bouncy ringlets. In one hand, she held a blacksmithing hammer, while in the other, it was empty. She almost looked like a statue of metal herself, except for the fact that she was humming as she bounced down the street, swinging the hammer with ease. "Here, kitty cat and little ladybug, I want to melt you down and then break you all up," Ironclaw sang merrily. "Wonderful. We have another crazy one," Ladybug muttered, and Chat couldn't help but chuckle. "Shall we, my lady?" he asked, holding a hand out to her. Ladybug took his hand and nodded. "Split up. Let's see what she's got." Chat pecked her on the hand with a grin, then released her before she could growl at him. Using his baton to launch himself to the other rooftop, he landed across the street without a sound, and they both ran forward in sync. As they came even with Ironclaw, they launched themselves off the rooftop, yo-yo and baton spinning to slow their descents. Ironclaw spun around, her hammer flashing in the sunlight, blinding Chat while throwing sparks and metal shards at Ladybug. Ladybug brought her yo-yo around just in time, blocking her attack as her feet hit the ground. Chat was closer as he landed, swinging blind as he attempted to land a blow. Ironclaw bent to the side as the baton flashed past, and almost lazily kicked out, sweeping Chad off his feet before throwing a second kick into his gut, tossing him down the street. The move left Ironclaw open, and Ladybug caught the leg in her yo-yo, twisting it so that she was off balance. Jerking on the string, Ladybug launched herself at Ironclaw, her foot connecting hard with a solid thump into Ironclaw's ribs, slamming the Akuma-sized person into the ground a few short feet away. "Ow! Oh, wow! Ow!" Ladybug yelped as she landed, hopping on one foot as Chat darted to her side. "What happened?" he demanded, and scooped her up, dodging metallic fragments. "I kicked her, and holy cow, her suit is hard. Actually, I think that suit is made of metal," Ladybug said, as Chat dodged behind a car to set her down once more. "Don't look at me like that. I'm fine, just bruised, and the impact shocked me. Besides, you were the one nailed in the ribs. Are you okay?" Chat nodded, then grimaced through the car windows, only to yelp and throw himself over the top of her. Glass exploded as metal shrieked, as chunks of stone blasted into the car that they were using for cover. "You'll pay for that little sneak attack," Ironclaw snarled, the attack pausing for a brief few seconds. Chat rolled off of Ladybug and jerked a thumb towards the bumper of the car. Ladybug nodded and pointed to the front. They ran out at the same time, giving Ironclaw 2 targets to deal with, and making her shriek in annoyance as she turned her attack on Ladybug. Pounding the ground with the hammer, it took on a golden color. When a second hit followed, it followed the hammer up off the ground, and once in the air, a third strike sprayed spikes out towards Ladybug's fleeing form. Her yo-yos spun, disintegrating the shards on impact, but they were still hitting hard enough to knock her back a little each time. "Why are you doing this?" Ladybug yelled, hoping to distract her since she could see Chat moving to position behind her. "Those artists destroyed our life's best work. We needed that commission to survive, and they have destroyed it," Ironclaw screamed, slamming her hammer into the ground again, creating another wave of shards. Feeling Ladybug's confusion, Tiki swiftly explained, since Plaga told her everything that had happened while they were eating. "That's it!" Ladybug cried, and dodged the next wave of shards coming to a halt, her hands raised trying to appear harmless, at least for a second. "If you let me purify your akuma, I'm sure that your statue will be fixed by Miraculous Cleanse. After all, it fixes everything related to the akuma, even if it wasn't the possessed item." Ironclaw froze mid-strike. You think so? Our statue could be fixed?" Ladybug nodded. "I know so. Your statue's called Shattered Iron, right? It's going to be showed off in the museum in a week, right?" "Yes, but," Ironclaw whispered, then froze, the purple mask flashing across her face. "No, don't go. Whatever he's promising you isn't the right way to go about this," Ladybug yelled, moving forward. "No, don't believe him. Whatever he's telling you isn't the right way to go about this," Ladybug yelled, moving forward several paces. "Do not patronize me. I am not a child, and Hawkmoth is correct. You have already taken my husband's akuma, and it didn't fix anything. You're the one who is wrong," Ironclaw screamed, and swept her hammer forward. Metal surged from the puddle on the ground before her, and Ladybug flicked her yo-yo up, trying to pull herself out of the way. Ladybug was too close, moved a second too late, and the liquid metal surged into her, knocking the air out of her back down into the ground. Ladybug had half expected pain, expected to feel like she was burning alive. But to her surprise, the metal wasn't very hot, although it was uncomfortable even through the suit. The liquid tightened around her, then suddenly another voice broke into the fight. "Cataclysm!" Chat's voice roared, and Ladybug yanked herself upright as the metal went liquid once more. Metal slid off of her like oil on the water, and she moved forward as Chat launched himself from the deepening shadows at Ironclaw. Attention instantly broken, Ironclaw turned, twisting her hammer up to block his claws, and it was bad luck that the one she connected the hammer with was the cataclysmed one. His other claws scored shallow groove-like scratches across her chest, where he could see the outline of a hammer-shaped pendant beneath the metal skin. Chat had been aiming for her chest and the pendant beneath it, in the hopes that he could finish this fight swiftly. That was never his luck, though, and the hammer between them dissolved. Chat was glad that his attack hadn't gone completely to waste. In the next instant, though, his luck turned worse, as Ironclaw shrieked in rage, her other hand flying up to catch Chat by the throat. As the hammer fully dissolved, Chat heard Ladybug yelp, "Damn it!" Then suddenly a hand closed around his neck. The grip was crushing, and he was smashed into the ground, a furious pair of burnt orange eyes searing into his, left no doubt in his mind as to who had grabbed him. Fear shivered down his spine as the hand squeezed tighter, leaving him unable to breathe, and he thrashed under her grip, his claws scoring groove after groove with company shrieks of metal being tortured. Ironclaw didn't flinch, neither from the sound nor the damage he was doing to her. Although Chat wasn't even sure he was doing any damage at all, since she wasn't bleeding and the marks were being healed as fast as he could make them. Slowly, her other hand rose, the tips of her fingers becoming wicked-looking claws, and Chat couldn't even swallow, her grip on his neck was so tight. Chat's head swam, and his vision turned spotty as Ladybug's voice cried, "Let him go!" A yo-yo spun around Ironclaw's upraised arm, and in the next moment she was yanked off of him, her hand leaving his throat, allowing him to breathe once more. Chat gasped and coughed, rolling onto his side as his own hand lifted to cradle his neck. A foot struck him in the back, and Chat twisted onto all fours, twisting to see metallic shoes glinting at him. Glancing up only to find a statue leaning down, hands ready to grab him, Chat decided that sitting still was not in his best interest. With a scratchy yelp that left his bruised throat aching, he scrambled forward out of the statue's grasp. Another statue blocked his way, and he hissed, throwing himself forward on all fours so that he could slide under a car and lose them. He came up on the other side, moving forward, staying low, already seeing the statues moving forward towards Ladybug in their creepy zombie-like way. Ironclaw was on her feet as well, and in the next second she was lunging at Ladybug with a screech, claws flashing in the air. Ladybug ducked and twisted, throwing her own punches with a grimace as she dodged flying claws and tried not to let Ironclaw get behind her. Chat ran at them, wondering why Ladybug hadn't moved, only to realize as he got closer that her feet were trapped in the once liquid metal, sealing her in place. It dawned on him suddenly that when he had destroyed the hammer, it had solidified the metal. "Oops," Chat murmured, then froze as he saw the statues moving in to grab Ladybug from behind. Ladybug's attention was on Ironclaw, and rightfully so since she was by far the more dangerous opponent. Ladybug's yo-yo moved rapidly, flinging out as Ironclaw dodged the weapon and tried to land an attack of her own. Moving swiftly, Chat launched himself over a car and slammed feet first into Ironclaw, who shrieked, even as she came down into a car across the street hard enough to leave an indentation in the metal. Chat dropped to his butt with a yowl, cradling his suddenly throbbing, aching feet. "I told you it hurt to kick her! Why did you do that?" Ladybug yelled at him, as he scrambled up to her side, ducking her yo-yo as she tied Ironclaw up. Ironclaw grabbed the yo-yo string, and with a flick of her wrist, Ladybug sent her flying into the wall on the other side of the street again. "I didn't think about it, okay? We have statues incoming, and you seem to be soldered into place," Chat answered, trying his claws out on the metal that kept Ladybug's feet stuck firmly in place. Ladybug ignored his pun, and twisting around she saw the incoming statues. Tossing her yo-yo out, she wrapped it around the one's waist at the far end, and used him like a wrecking ball to knock all the others off their feet out of the way. "Now I wish I hadn't used Cataclysm," Chat grumbled, slashing at the ground as he desperately tried to free her feet. "Look out!" Ladybug yelped, as she turned and saw Ironclaw leaping up at them once more. Snatching the baton from Chat's back, she brought it up before them, catching her deadly claws on the baton. The claws extended suddenly, two of them digging into Ladybug's shoulder, making her yelp in surprise and pain. "I will end you!" Ironclaw snarled, and Chat launched himself upwards, catching her in the gut and charged forward with her bent over his shoulder. Her claws dug into him a moment later, making him yelp and trip, sending them both sprawling to the ground. Chat rolled and dodged backwards so that he was off to the side, while Ironclaw stood once more, looking ragged and scratched up. "You two took my partner from me. Now I shall take yours," she hissed as the purple mask lit up her face. For a moment, Chat didn't understand. Then he heard the words, "Lucky Charm!" and he understood all too well. It was a moment of weakness for them, however brief, when they called upon their special powers. In that moment, they couldn't move or use their respective weapons, but the time frame itself was so brief that neither of them had ever considered it a weakness before. Chat moved, his body and mind in complete agreement, even as Plague screamed at him. His baton was still in Ladybug's hands, but Chat didn't care. He couldn't lose Ladybug, and he couldn't lose Marinette. Now that he knew that they were both one and the same, his entire being was in total agreement that under no circumstances he could ever let any deadly harm come to her. Chat was already closer to Ladybug than Ironclaw, but he wasn't close enough to knock her down, so he did the next best thing and used his body as a shield. Pain seared through his torso and chest, and it was with a touch of horror that he looked down to see metal claws poking through his suit. Ladybug's eyes were wide and filled with horror as well, as a lucky charm landed in her numb hands. "It's in the glass pendant," Chat wheezed, his body on fire even as his vision started to go dim. Then he was lifted from his feet, then tossed sideways, the claws ripping back out of him moments before he hit something hard. "Stay conscious!" Plague screeched, and from somewhere close he heard the Ladybug yelled, "Chat!" It was the last thing he heard before the darkness sucked him down. It had taken Ladybug off guard when Ironclaw's nails had extended to stab into her, and of course, at her cry of pain, Chat had leapt into action, practically tackling Ironclaw out of the way down the street. The statues behind her were on their feet and moving forward towards her once again, and Ladybug couldn't pull her feet free of the metal encasing them. Hearing the statue's metal feet striking the street with every step, Ladybug knew that she had to make a plan before they ran out of time. With a final glance at Chat, who seemed to be glaring down Ironclaw, she missed what the Akuma-sized person said, and as she made her decision. "Lucky Charm!" Ladybug cried, throwing her yo-yo into the air. It was a mistake, one that she would never make again if they survived the mess she had gotten them into. Never in her life had she ever seen a person move as fast as Chat did in that moment. He threw himself forward as the light above her head coalesced, but Ladybug didn't even look to see what had formed. Instead, her eyes were glued to the scene unfolding before her. Ironclaw's nails shot forward, aiming at her, but something got in the way before they even came close to reaching her. That something was Chat. Ladybug's heart practically stopped when Chat jerked forward slightly as the claws struck him, and she could just make out the tip of at least one of them poking through his costume. "No, no, 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 no!" Tiki squeaked rapidly in her head, voicing what she couldn't, and Ladybug felt the lucky charm land in her hands, but she couldn't bear to look down to see what it was. Her mouth formed the words "Chat," but no sound emerged, and Chat's eyes rose to meet hers. Green locked with blue as he managed to say, It's in the glass pendant." A snarl of frustration from behind Chat, and as his body lifted into the air, suspended by the claws, before being tossed sideways into the wall of the building. The claws snapped back to Ironclaw, who shook her hand, flicking Chat's blood from her nail-coated fingertips. The lucky charm in Ladybug's hand hit the ground at her feet as she screamed, "Chat!" her body thrashing as she tipped forward. Ironclaw laughed at her distraught scream, and Ladybug hit the ground, jerking forward as the metal splintered suddenly, as one foot came free. Heart in her throat and fury in her blood, Ladybug glanced back at her still trapped foot, and saw the canister that had been created by the lucky charm. LN2 was spelled out on the side, and she recognized the abbreviation from science class. Liquid nitrogen, Ladybug whispered, then ducked as claws slashed past her head, digging into the metal behind her. Shooting to her feet once more, Ladybug twisted around, avoiding Ironclaw's second attack, and she knew what she had to do as a nearby statue reached for her. Swinging her yo-yo, Ladybug caught the close shambling statue around the middle and swung them out towards Ironclaw. Trying to duck, Ironclaw didn't manage to quite move fast enough, and the statuified person slammed into her, knocking her to the ground once more. Knowing she had bought herself only a few seconds, Ladybug dropped to a crouch. Grabbing the canister, she hit the spray top, pointing it at the metal around her still-trapped foot. The metal creaked as the liquid nitrogen hit it, and snatching up Chat's staff, she dropped the canister, before using both hands to slam the end of the baton into the frozen metal twice. The metal shattered on impact, and Ladybug was off, Chat's staff in hand. Her first instinct was go to Chat, but she ignored it. She wanted to save his life, but Ladybug knew to do that, she had to defeat Ironclaw. The clock was ticking, and Ladybug didn't know how long she had left. The statue person was tossed sideways, allowing Ironclaw to scramble forward, onto her feet, her hair a mess as her eyes were wild. "You stupid bug! I will stab you so full of holes like I did that cat!" Ladybug's yo-yo caught her in the side of the head, cutting off her screeching. In the next instant, Ladybug was close enough, and she swung the staff, crashing it into her side and arm with a sharp clang. The blow knocked Ironclaw sideways, jarring Ladybug as well, and Ironclaw fell as she threw one arm out to catch herself as the other flailed upwards, claws extending. One of them slashed past Ladybug's cheek, cutting it open, as another stabbed into the top of her shoulder, close enough to her neck that she had no doubt as to what Ironclaw's true intent had been. "He's fading," Tiki whimpered in her mind, and Ladybug leapt back to avoid a second serious blow. Tears filled Ladybug's eyes as she dodged under Ironclaw's nails, trying to get a shot at her chest where she could see the hammer-shaped pendant under her pale skin. Using the staff more like a rapier, Ladybug stabbed at the spot, and was met with the sound of screeching metal. The end collided with Ironclaw's throat, and Ironclaw fell back a step, then slid sideways as she grabbed the baton, yanking Ladybug off balance. Stumbling forward, Ladybug was unable to dodge as Ironclaw threw a hard punch, expanding the metal on her hand for a larger surface. The fist caught Ladybug right in the gut, throwing her back several feet. Hitting the ground hard, Ladybug rolled to her side, body running on adrenaline as she desperately tried to ignore the pain. Trying to push herself up, Ladybug's arm collapsed as pain radiated through her ribs, causing her to gasp in agony. "We need to get that pendant now!" Tiki cried, her voice full of pain for both her chosen and for Chat. "The metal! It's too thick to break through," Ladybug began, only to pause as a flash of red caught her attention. "Of course. I'm so stupid." Ignoring the pain and taking shallow breaths, Ladybug forced herself up, scrambling forward to snatch the lucky canister charm. "Time to join your partner, Ladybug," Ironclaw sneered, advancing on her. "I don't think so," Ladybug snarled in answer, rolling to her feet as Ironclaw flashed polka-dotted, while the rest of the world grayed out. Throwing the canister at Ironclaw as hard as she could, Ladybug charged forward once more, even as the canister left her hand. Ironclaw slashed the canister in half just before it hit her, liquid nitrogen bursting out from it and coating her chest and shoulders, making her shriek along with her metal skin. The strange canister was still stuck to her now frozen claws, and she flung it off, the halved canister striking the ground and sliding under a nearby car. Stumbling back, the aching cold biting into her, Ironclaw didn't even register Ladybug's presence until her fist smashed into her chest. Ladybug hit with enough force to buckle Ironclaw's legs, and they both struck the ground as Ladybug on top, with her snatching the exposed vibrant purple pendant from around Ironclaw's throat. In the next instant, Ladybug screamed as claws slammed through her torso and flung her sideways over the top of a car. Ladybug hit the ground hard, pendant shattering as her body collided with the ground. There was a moment of silence as she lay on her side, staring at the pendant that faded in color, as the purple butterfly started to wiggle free. Ladybug slammed her yo-yo down over it before the butterfly could take off, unsure as if she would be able to even catch it if it managed to escape into the air. Pain radiated through her as her fingers pressed the yo-yo again, freeing the white butterfly within. "Bye-bye, little butterfly," Ladybug managed for the second time that day, as her eyes closed and she rolled onto her back. Everything hurt. She could feel warmth spreading over her chest, and in all honesty, she was completely exhausted. "The charm, Marinette! Get the charm!" Tiki cried, and Ladybug turned her head, her eyes opening as she realized that the lucky charm was under the car next to her. It was just barely within arm's reach, and pulling it out, she used the last of her strength to toss it up into the air from her prone position, calling, "Miraculous cleanse!" Her voice came out as a squeak, and her canister didn't even clear the roof of the car, but it was enough to activate the magic within the item. Light poured around her, then swirled off, and Ladybug felt her eyes close, exhaustion flooding her, even as the pain thankfully stopped. "Marinette! Marinette! You can't fall asleep here! Please, wake up!" Tiki cried in her mind, and Ladybug blinked as somebody called her name. "Ladybug! Ladybug! Are you okay?" Forcing her eyes open, Ladybug stared into a stranger's eyes. "Chat?" Ladybug asked, and the person looked up at someone nearby. "Hey, she's awake! Where's Chat?" they called, as they gently helped Ladybug sit up properly. Her head pounded, and using the stranger as leverage, she managed to make it to her feet. "Hey, I don't think you should be getting up," they called, as she stumbled forward using the car as a prop. The initial dizziness that she had faded as she moved forward, and as she moved around to the end of the car, she spied the woman that had once been Ireclaw, looking around bewildered, as well as a dozen other people who had been under her control as statues. As fast as she dared, Ladybug stumbled to the spot where she had last seen Chat, yelling, "Out of the way! Please, move!" People stood around him in a loose circle, although they moved aside to let Ladybug pass, and she made it to her side, dropping to her knees in the next second, calling his name in a lost-sounding voice. There were no holes in his costume, and as Ladybug flipped him over onto his back, she pressed an ear to his chest. "Please, let me have made it in time," she whispered, her eyes closed as she listened intently. The crowd around her went silent, and from deep within his chest, Ladybug could hear the faintest thump. A second later, his chest rose slightly under her ear, and Ladybug felt something within her chest break as she pulled him into her lap, a dry sob leaving her lips as she clutched Chat to her. "Is he?" someone in the crowd asked as the Miraculous beeped in time. "Alive," Ladybug managed, her voice broken but audible. A sigh of relief echoed around her, and Ladybug agreed wholeheartedly. A glance at his ring showed 2 pads left, and Ladybug realized that she had to get him away from these people, and somewhere safe now. "Do you need a ride to the hospital? They said that you were unconscious like Chat when they found you," a woman asked, and Ladybug shook her head, lifting Chat onto her shoulders in a fireman's carry. She almost stumbled as she stood, her body feeling weak and shaky, but once more she relied on Tiki's strength to stand firm. Several of the people had shifted forward when she nearly stumbled, and she flashed them a wan-looking smile. "Thank you, but I've got him," Ladybug answered, and threw her yo-yo, one arm gripping Chat tight to keep him steady, as she pulled them both up onto the rooftops. Without even looking back, Ladybug ran like an akuma was chasing her, and beat the timers that were steadily counting down. "Hurry, Marinette! I can't hold out much longer," Tiki whimpered. A moment later her feet hit her rooftop, and she stumbled in through a trap door as matching flashes of light, signifying the end of their transformations. Exhaustion pulled at Marinette. Her head hurt, and in all honesty, she wasn't sure how she had managed to make it to her house in time. Adrian lay sprawled out on the bed next to her, and the 2 Kwami lay where the Miraculous had expelled them, exhausted as well. Forcing herself to stay conscious, although she felt like she could sleep for a week, Marinette scooped both Plag and Tiki up into her hands, kissing them both on the top of their head. Plag just grumbled, his eyes closed and clung to Tiki. Tiki patted his head with a tiny paw and gazed up at Marinette with bright blue eyes. "Are they okay?" Marinette whispered, turning to place the two Kwami on a pillow off to the side. Tiki nodded. "Plag kept his boy alive, although Adrian fought to stay just as hard. They're both exhausted, and so are you, Marinette. You were critically injured right there at the end. If Lucky Charm hadn't been under the car, you probably both would have died." Marinette managed a small smile, although she felt like she was going to pass out in any second. "I guess that's our luck, huh? I don't think I have the energy to get you food right now, Tiki. Not sure I'll be awake much longer." Eyes closed for a brief moment, and Marinette shook herself, the blood loss and the fight in general leaving her wrung out. Placing the Kwami on the pillow, she managed to flop down so that she was curled up right next to Adrian. Marinette didn't hear Tiki reply as she wrapped one arm around him, and within moments, she was sound asleep. It was a dream, she hoped. Chat was lying in the street, and Ironclaw was nearby, laughing as she raised her hand in a killing blow. Marinette tried to move forward, but she couldn't, and she realized with growing horror that she was coated in metal and one of the shambling statues that was scattered about. "No!" she cried, and in the next instant shot upright, her heart throbbing painfully. It was dark outside, and she pressed a hand to her chest, trying to control her ragged breathing, a grumble sounding out next to her. Adrian lay beside her, still asleep, and Marinette let out a shuddering breath as she reached out to press a gentle hand to his chest. His heart beat slow and strong beneath her palm, and with a sniffle, she lay back down, curling against him. "Marinette?" Adrian queried, his voice groggy. "I'm here," Marinette whispered, pushing herself up onto one elbow so that she could see his face. Moonlight streamed in through the window above them, and for a minute, Marinette felt her heart stutter as he smiled at her, one hand rising to brush her cheek. Dear God, he was handsome in the moonlight, his hair ruffled and green eyes bright. Pressing her own free hand to his, she sighed against his touch, moving so that in the next instant she was draped across his chest. "I had the weirdest dream," Adrian said suddenly, his hand lifting from her cheek to run through her silky soft hair. "Really?" Marinette asked, happy to feel his purr start up as she ran a hair through his hair in turn. "Yeah, we were fighting an akuma, and you said you were Ladybug," Adrian answered. Marinette shot up, startling him, and she stared down at Adrian in disbelief. "I am Ladybug, you idiot!" she burst out, hoping that he was messing with her, and yet she wasn't totally sure. Adrian blinked and cocked his head to the side, then reached up and pinched himself hard on the arm, only to wince. "I'm not dead?" Marinette gaped at him, a million emotions running through her. Then she reached out, plucked a pillow up off her bed, and slammed it into Adrian as hard as she could. "You stupid cat! You stupid boy! How dare you ask that!" she shrieked, her voice gaining pitch and volume as she slammed the pillow into him again and again. Adrian yelped and rolled, trying to block the pillow as Marinette continued to yell at him. "Sorry! I'm Marinette, I'm sorry! I didn't mean... Ah!" Adrian yelped as he rolled a touch too far and went over the edge of the bed. A second later, Marinette appeared, looking downright furious at him, with tears in her eyes. "Do you even know how much it hurt to see you get injured like that? Do you realize that I almost lost you?" Marinette snarled, the tears falling from her eyes as she glared down at him. Adrian moved swiftly, pushing up off the floor to snag Marinette in a tight grip, pulling her shuddering body against him. "Marinette, I'm sorry. The last thing I remember is Ironclaw trying to skewer Ladybug, but I knew she was you, and I couldn't bear to lose you, Marinette. Marinette, if I lost you, I would lose myself. I'm sorry, but between my life and yours, you always win." Marinette sobbed into his chest, and he barely made out, "Stupid cat." After a moment, she pulled back to glare at him, tear tracks marking her cheeks, and fresh tears making her blue eyes shimmer in the moonlight. How do you think I feel when you get hurt? Ironclaw almost killed you. If I hadn't been able to use Lucky Charm when I did, you could have died. You both would have died, actually, a grumpy, growly voice said from the pillow from their side. Plague! Tiki squeaked, and the two Kwami floated up into the air, rubbing at their eyes sleepily. Plague's words struck Adrian like a physical blow. What? He gasped. Tiki swatted Plague and he huffed, but he still answered since he knew that Tiki wouldn't. Little Miss Ladybug there tends to fight rather dangerously when you go down, Adrian. When your life is on the line, she puts hers down as well as an effort to finish as fast as possible. This time was certainly no exception. The wounds she sustained were as bad as yours. Plus, the previous injuries from earlier in the day made it worse. To be honest, I'm even surprised you woke up tonight, Marinette. Marinette felt her face heat up. That was the most she had ever heard Plague speak, and the tone left absolutely no doubt in her mind that he was annoyed. What Grumpy Cat here is trying to say is that we both could have lost you today. You both need to be more careful, and neither is expendable. Marinette will always try to fight to save your life, Adrian, and you will always fight to save hers. It's something you both need to work on, Tiki said, her voice much gentler tone than her partner's. Tears formed in Adrian's eyes at the thought of Marinette getting killed for his sake, and lifting her chin up, Adrian spoke, his voice gentle. Is what Plague said true? Marinette's chin jutted out stubbornly. You protect me, and I in turn protect you. I can't and won't do this without you, either as Adrian or Chat. I will fight to keep you by my side, even if it kills me, just as you will take a killing blow meant for me. I may not be able to stop you, but once you go down, Adrian, you can't stop me either. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. The tears in Adrian's eyes overflowed at her declaration, and the two floating Kwamis sighed, knowing exactly how she felt. Adrian knew that he should be angry, and he was fearful about how reckless Marinette could get. He knew that he should probably tell her that she should never do anything like that again, to put her life on the line since she was the only one that could fix the messes that the akuma created. However, he also knew that he should practice what he preached. Instead, he pressed his lips to hers, eyes closing as her arms went around his neck, pulling him even closer. Their tears mingled on pressed cheeks as her hand trailed up into his hair. Tilting his head to deepen the kiss, Adrian's hand moved up to cup the nape of her neck as a purr rumbled up through his chest. Finally, the both of them needed air, and they pulled back panting and flushed. Marinette, I love you. From this day until the day I die, you are mine to protect and care for, Adrian whispered, sending a bright red blush staining her cute freckled cheeks. Marinette's hand in his hair gently left his hair as she drew a thumb across his cheek, swiping a tear from his smooth skin. I've always loved you. I just had to get used to your cute kitten side, and now that I have, I will never let you go. Gently, she pressed another kiss to his lips, and he sighed against her, climbing back onto her bed as she slumped against him. They were both still exhausted and in need of more sleep, so as Adrian settled down, Marinette pulled their shoes off, tossing them over the edge of the bed. Lifting the covers, Adrian held them up, letting Marinette snuggle down next to him, as the two of them eyed the Kwami who floated above their heads. Did you guys get something to eat? Marinette asked, barely withholding a yawn as she wrapped an arm around Adrian, her head resting on his chest over his heartbeat. We will find something, Tiki answered, and Marinette nodded as Adrian wrapped an arm around her. Good night, Princess, Adrian whispered, pressing a kiss to her hair. Marinette smiled at the nickname. Good night, kitty. I love you. Adrian tensed, then squeezed her gently as she rested her head on her chest once more. I love you too, Marinette, he whispered, a purr rising in his chest as he saw the smile that creased her lips when she heard him. He couldn't help but smile in return, even though she couldn't see it. With the sound of his purr a nice backdrop, the two heroes lay curled around each other, and together finally got some much-needed sleep.